Imagine arriving in Australia for the very first time. Nobody hands you a rule book. Nobody explains how things work. Yet somehow everyone around you seems to know exactly what to do. They stand in the right place, say the right things, and follow rules that were never written down anywhere. Americans visiting Australia often notice something strange. It isn't the beaches or the kangaroos that surprise them the most. It's the invisible rules that quietly shape everyday life. Miss one of these rules and nobody will yell at you. But you'll immediately feel like the only person who didn't get the memo. Today we're exploring 7 unwritten Australian rules that millions of Australians follow without even thinking. If you've ever visited Australia, tell us which one surprised you the most. And if you're Australian, let us know which of these feels so normal that you forgot the rest of the world does things differently. Stay until the end, because the final rule catches almost every American completely off guard. Rule number 1 begins before anyone even speaks. An American walks into a quiet cafe in Melbourne. There are empty tables everywhere. Instead of sitting down immediately, every customer joins a short line. Nobody is rushing. Nobody is pushing forward. Everyone simply waits their turn. The American wonders why people are standing when so many tables are free. Then they realize something. In Australia, you order first, then find your seat. Nobody tells you. Everyone just knows. Australians have a deep respect for queues. Whether it's a supermarket, coffee shop, airport, or bus stop, cutting in line is one of the quickest ways to attract silent disapproval. You probably won't hear anyone complain. You'll simply notice people looking at each other, wondering how someone missed such an obvious rule. Americans often come from places where service styles vary from restaurant to restaurant. In Australia, patience is simply expected. Waiting your turn is part of everyday life. Australians, have you ever seen someone accidentally skip a queue? How did everyone react? Tell us below. Now here's where things become even more interesting. An American finishes buying groceries in Sydney. The cashier smiles and says, "How are you going?" The American freezes for a second. Going where? Home, the hotel, back to work. Australians aren't asking about your destination. They're simply asking how you're doing. Australia is filled with expressions that sound completely different to foreign visitors. Someone might say no worries, good on ya, or too easy. None of these phrases mean exactly what they sound like. They create a relaxed atmosphere where conversations stay friendly without becoming formal. Americans often spend their first few weeks translating every sentence literally before realizing Australians speak with an entire culture hidden inside ordinary words. Once you understand the rhythm, conversations suddenly become much easier. Australians, what Australian phrase confuses visitors every single time? We'd love to hear it. Before we reveal rule number 3, here's something many visitors never expect. Australians rarely try to impress people with status. Imagine meeting someone at a barbecue. You ask what they do for work. They answer with one simple sentence before changing the subject. Nobody spends 10 minutes listing achievements or explaining how important they are. In Australia, confidence often looks quiet. Being too boastful can actually create the opposite impression. Australians admire people who stay humble, even when they're successful. It's one reason sports stars, business owners, and celebrities are often expected to behave like ordinary people. Americans sometimes come from cultures where talking proudly about success is completely normal. In Australia, letting your actions speak louder than your words earns much more respect. It's an unwritten rule that shapes everyday conversations across the country. We've reached the halfway point, but the next rule is the one many Americans say completely changed how they viewed Australia. If you're enjoying this video, subscribe now because we explore the surprising everyday differences between countries that most people never notice. Picture a beautiful Australian beach on a warm Saturday afternoon. Hundreds of people are swimming. Families are relaxing. Children are building sandcastles. Yet before anyone enters the water, many Australians stop for a moment. They look toward the ocean. They check the flags. Then they walk between the red and yellow markers before swimming. Nobody has to remind them. This is one of Australia's strongest unwritten rules: swim between the flags. The flags mark the safest part of the beach where lifeguards are watching and dangerous rip currents are less likely. Visitors sometimes ignore them because the beach looks calm everywhere. Australians know appearances can be misleading. Respecting the ocean isn't fear, it's common sense. Lifeguards rescue thousands of people every year, many of them tourists who underestimated Australian beaches. Australians grow up learning this rule from childhood until it becomes automatic. Americans visiting Australia quickly realize that beach culture here isn't only about relaxing. It's about respecting nature. Australians, were you taught to swim between the flags as a child? Tell us in the comments. Rule number 5 is something many Americans don't notice until they have lived in Australia for several weeks. An American is invited to a weekend barbecue in Brisbane. They arrive carrying expensive snacks and a carefully wrapped gift for the host. They quickly realize almost everyone else has simply brought a small salad, drinks, or dessert. Nobody is trying to outdo anyone. Nobody is competing to bring the fanciest food. In Australia, the barbecue isn't about showing off. It's about spending time together. The backyard is the dining room. The conversation matters more than the menu. People joke, laugh, and help themselves without making a big deal about it. Children play outside while adults relax for hours. Americans often expect the host to organize everything. Australians are more likely to share the responsibility. Everyone contributes something small, making the gathering feel relaxed instead of formal. It's another unwritten rule that reflects Australia's easygoing lifestyle. Australians, what is the one food that absolutely has to be at a proper Aussie barbecue? Tell us below. Now, the next rule catches almost every newcomer. Imagine driving through a quiet Australian suburb. The speed limit suddenly drops. A flashing sign appears near a school. Every driver immediately slows down. Nobody argues. Nobody races to beat the lights. Australians take school zones seriously because protecting children comes before saving a few seconds. The same attitude appears in many parts of Australian life. Road safety campaigns are everywhere. Seatbelts are automatic. Random breath testing is common and widely accepted. Americans are sometimes surprised by how strict these rules are, but Australians generally see them as part of everyday responsibility. The goal isn't simply to punish bad drivers, it's to prevent accidents before they happen. After living in Australia for a while, many Americans admit they begin driving differently without even realizing it. The unwritten rule becomes part of their routine. Australians, do you think road safety is one of the biggest differences visitors notice? We'd love to hear your opinion. We've reached the final rule, and this might be the biggest cultural surprise of them all. An American moves to Australia expecting people to constantly talk about success, promotions, expensive cars, and bigger houses. Instead, they notice something different. Conversations often revolve around weekends, family, sport, holidays, and spending time outdoors. Australians certainly work hard, but many also protect their personal time. Finishing work means switching off whenever possible. Taking annual leave isn't seen as laziness, it's simply part of life. Long weekends are celebrated. Holidays are planned months ahead. Time with friends is treated as something valuable, not something squeezed into an already busy schedule. This balance surprises many Americans who come from environments where being busy can sometimes become a badge of honor. Australians generally believe life should include work, but it shouldn't only be about work. That unwritten rule shapes everything from family dinners to beach trips and camping weekends. It helps explain why so many visitors fall in love with the Australian lifestyle. So let's look back at the 7 unwritten rules Australians follow every day. They patiently wait their turn without needing reminders. They speak with uniquely Australian expressions that create an easygoing atmosphere. They stay humble instead of constantly talking about achievements. They respect the ocean by swimming between the flags. They treat barbecues as shared experiences instead of competitions. They take road safety seriously because protecting lives matters. And perhaps most importantly, they remember that life isn't only about work. It's about making time for the people and experiences that matter most. None of these rules are written into law. Nobody hands you a booklet when you land at the airport. Yet together, they quietly shape everyday life across Australia.